welcome. I'm Kate Forsyth, patron of the Historical Novel Society, Australasia. It's my great pleasure to host this video to celebrate the results of the 2022 ARA Historical Novel Prize, the most significant genre-based prize in Australia and New Zealand. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to the peoples of New Zealand a warm and sincere welcome. The ARA Historical Novel Prize is worth a total of $100,000 in prize monies. The prize will award $50,000 to the adult category winner, with an additional $5,000 to be awarded to each of the remaining 2 shortlisted authors. In the children and young adult category, the winner will receive $30,000, while the 2 shortlisters will receive $5,000 each. The prize is the result of a shared vision between the Historical Novel Society Australasia and Edward Federman, founder, executive chair and CEO of the ARA Group. Together they have raised the profile of the genre and enabled historical novelists to be recognised and rewarded in a class of their own. I'd like to take a moment to personally thank Edward Federman and the Historical Novel Society Australasia for their vision and generosity. A prize like this has the power to change a writer's life and ensures the vitality and relevance of historical fiction to readers everywhere. I wish all the shortlisted authors the very best of luck and urge you all to read their work. They are all extraordinary. I'd now like to welcome the chair of the HNSA, Elizabeth Stores, to tell you more about the HNSA and the value of historical fiction.
The Historical Novel Society Australasia was established to promote the reading, writing and publishing of historical fiction. Over the last 8 years, we've showcased top literary talent through our biennial conferences, online programs, chat salons and podcasts. HNSA also hosts a dynamic online community of over 2,000 members. Anyone who shares a love of history and creativity is welcome to join us. We're deeply grateful for the opportunity to partner with the generous Edward Federman of the ARA Group to run the ARA Historical Novel Prize. Now in its 3rd year, the contest has raised the profile of dozens of gifted historical novelists, rewarded the winners and fostered the genre on a grander scale. The best historical fiction holds up a mirror to the past, shines a light on the present and provides a beacon for the future through strong characters, depth of research and bold prose. The breadth of historical realms explored in this year's long lists was astonishing, from Chaucer's England and Holland's Golden Age through to 19th and 20th century tales set in Australia, America, China, England, France, Germany, the Middle East, New Zealand, Norway, Russia and Sumatra. What a feast! The 2022 shortlists tackled powerful themes such as racism, classism and gender expectations, as well as self-reliance, reinvention and survival. These novels demonstrate the power of historical fiction to explore often unspoken truths and illuminate the challenges faced by humankind throughout the centuries. My gratitude is extended to our dedicated judges. I'd also like to thank the hardworking HNSA committee and the talented ARA creative team who have produced this video. Congratulations to all the listed authors, and in particular the winners. HNSA loves making a noise about your wonderful novels.
The novels and authors longlisted for the adult category of the 2022 ARA Historical Novel Prize are The Good Wife of Bath by Karen Brooks, published by HQ, HarperCollins Publishers Australia. The Winter Dress by Lauren Chater, published by Simon & Schuster Australia. Good Night Vivienne, Good Night by Stephen Cowell, published by HarperCollins Publishers Australia. Only Birds Above by Portland Jones, published by Fremantle Press. The Ratcatcher by Kim Kelly, published by Brio Brooks. The Sawdust House by David Wish Wilson, published by Fremantle Press. The novels and authors long-listed for the children and young adult category of the 2022 ARA Historical Novel Prize are The Unstoppable Flying Flanagan by Felice Arena, published by Penguin Random House Australia. Slipping the Noose by Meg Caddy, published by Text Publishing. Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong, published by Hachette New Zealand. Amarangi and Millie's Trip Through Time by Lon Keenan, published by Who We Are Publishing. Augustine and the Hot Air Balloon by David Metzenthan, published by Ford Street Publishing. The Secret Battle by Pamela Rushby, published by Eagle Books, an imprint of Christmas Press. Now let's hear from Edward Fetterman from the ARA Group to hear his reasons for sponsoring the prize.
ARA's association with the Historical Novel Society Australasia began in 2018 as a sponsor of the Society's biennial conference. The passion of the leadership and members of the Historical Novel Society was infectious. I was a history major as an undergraduate student, and I remain a frustrated history student who did not go on to graduate study. So the next best thing I could do was find a way to support those who do bring history to life. 3 years ago, I met with Elizabeth Storrs and Diane Murray, the leadership team of the Historical Novel Society, and I floated an idea to them. Fortunately, Elizabeth and Diane had an open mind to the idea of an historical novel prize supported by ARA in conjunction with the Historical Novel Society. I had this dream of an ARA literary prize. I longed to see the ARA logo on books of significant literary value. All of this culminated in the ARA Historical Novel Prize. With the total prize money of $100,000, this makes the ARA Historical Novel Prize the richest genre-based literary prize in Australia and New Zealand. A significant amount of work is required by many people to ensure the success of this literary prize. First and foremost, I want to thank Elizabeth Storrs, Chair of the Historical Novel Society Australasia, ARA's partner in this endeavor. The dedication of the Historical Novel Society's team has been invaluable. Without the work of the judges in both categories, there would be no literary prize. Heartfelt thanks to Angelo Lukakis, Chair of the Adult category, and his team of judges. Likewise, sincere thanks to Paul McDonald, Chair of the Children and Young Adult category, and his team of judges. The judges had an enormous amount of reading to do to whittle down entries to a long list, and then a very difficult job to determine the short list and eventually the winners. I have read most of the long-listed adult books and one of the children's books. They are all exceptional novels. We are blessed with talented writers in Australia and New Zealand. The importance of literary prizes and the monetary rewards that support our very best novelists cannot be overstated, especially in these challenging times. ARA has a consistent history of supporting literature and the arts. The ARA Historical Novel Prize is an important element of ARA's commitment to literature in our region of the world.
Now let's turn to the CYA category. The 3 members of the judging panel for the prize were Panel Chair Paul McDonald is the owner of the award-winning The Children's Bookshop. He has won numerous awards in teaching, such as a Quality Teacher Award and the Premier's English Scholarship. He is the winner of the 2012 Morris Saxby Award and the 2016 Lady Cutler Award for services to children's literature and literacy in Australia. Rachel King is the New Zealand author of The Sound of Butterflies, published internationally and translated into 9 languages. Magpie Hall and Red Rocks, a junior novel that won the Esther Glenn Medal in 2014. Rachel was the program director of Word Christchurch for 8 years until the end of 2021. Deborah Abella trained as a history and English teacher before becoming writer and producer of a national children's TV show at Network 10. She has since written 28 internationally published and awarded books, including her climate change trilogy and Teresa, a New Australian, inspired by her family's migration to Australia after the devastation of World War II. Chosen from the 9 long-listed books, congratulations are extended to the 3 authors shortlisted in the CYA category of the prize. Katapo Joe, Wolf's Lair by Brian Faulkner, published by Scholastic New Zealand.
I'm smiling because the judges absolutely loved Katapo Joe, Wolf's Lair by Brian Faulkner. Wolf's Lair offers an epic conclusion to the Katapo Joe trilogy, though ultimately it stands alone as a gripping narrative set in World War II. It's set at the centre of Hitler's inner circle as the Second World War gains momentum and Germany begins its crucial invasion of the Soviet Union. Faulkner's created an authentic narrative, it's a nail-biting adventure, and he cleverly mixes fictional and historic figures such as Hitler. But ultimately, it's so much more than an action novel, and that's its beauty. Faulkner explores the tensions, he explores moral questions with sensitivity, with energy, and ultimately with masterly skill. Once again, like all the other shortlisted novels, Katapo Joe offers excellence in writing, shows depth in research, and offers broad appeal. So congratulations, Brian Faulkner, for Katapo Joe, Wolf's Lair.
Understanding our history is the key to understanding ourselves and the world that we live in. But too often people seem to think of history as being dull and dry and boring. And that's where historical fiction comes in. It allows young people to immerse themselves in the past, to vicariously experience what must have been world-shattering events. A lot of the things in my story are fictional. I made them up. But as much as possible, I tried to base them on reality. One example of this in my novel Wolf's Lair is an attempt to assassinate Adolf Hitler on his train, his private train. Our hero, 15-year-old Joe, climbs on top of that train in order to put poison into a water tank. Now, this didn't happen in real life, but it nearly did. There was an actual MI5 plot to assassinate Hitler in exactly this way. And all the aspects in my novel, the train itself, the type of poison, the location of the water tank, are all historically accurate. In fact, often the most unbelievable parts of the novel, the most unbelievable aspects, are the things that are the most historically accurate, which is why I include a glossary and photographs and a fact versus fiction section, so that young people can help separate historical reality from historical fiction.
Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief by Katrina Nannestad, published by HarperCollins Publishers Australia.
It was an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be one of the judges for the ARA Historical Novel Prize Children and Young Adult section for 2022. I'd like to chat with you about Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief by Katrina Nannestad. This is one of the shortlisted books this year. This book was a complete joy to read, from Katrina's lyrical prose to her very careful and poignant depiction of war and its impact on everyone in its wake. It is convincing, engaging, and really well researched. The war in Russia is seen through the eyes of a young boy, which creates a lovely innocence that is passed on to the reader, who learns about the complexities of war, the atrocities, but also the kindnesses as the main character is learning about them as well. Katrina is also a master at dealing with a really terrible incident, but knowing just when to kind of pull back, what to include and what to leave out. This book is breathtaking and moving and outstanding and completely deserves to be on the shortlist.
While doing research for my previous novel, We Are Wolves, I came across a true story of a boy named Sergei Oleshkov, who was between 6 and 8 years of age when he joined the Red Army during the Great Patriotic War. There wasn't a lot of information available about this little boy, but some of the accounts I read were quite poetic, even fable-like in nature. They spoke glowingly of Sergei's sweet personality and the way he cheered his fellow soldiers by his presence, which made me begin to wonder, could one little boy really soften the hearts of tough, battle-scarred soldiers? Could one small child really make a difference for good amidst the horrors of war? So this was the wondering, the small seed, the idea that sprouted and grew into my story of Sasha, the child soldier who changes his world in the only way he knows how, which is by being kind.
The Wearing of the Green by Claire Saxby, published by Walker Books.
Kia ora koutou katoa. It was a massive privilege for me to be on this judging panel, and I absolutely loved this book. The young heroine of Claire Saxby's gripping, gorgeously written novel, The Wearing of the Green, drives the story with her courage and determination. I fell in love with Biddy, an Irish immigrant fresh off the boat following tremendous hardship and loss in her home country. But instead of a better life, she encounters new hardships, loneliness and back-breaking work as domestic help to a cruel and reckless farmer trying to scratch an existence on the unforgiving Australian soil. With issues of sexism, classism and racism, this book doesn't shy away from difficult material, but the impeccable research is seamlessly incorporated into a compelling story. The writing is visual and evocative, with deft characterisation and a beautiful heart.
In writing The Wearing of the Green, I wanted to write a story about a girl arriving in Melbourne in the early 1850s when the gold rush was happening elsewhere. My family arrived in this decade to a rapidly growing and changing Melbourne. I discovered the Earl Grey scheme, which brought 22 shiploads of mostly teenaged Irish girls to Australia to be servants and potentially wives. In this decade, in this town, a girl like Biddy might have the chance of a life not possible before and much less likely in the more stable, settled time that followed. My title, The Wearing of the Green, references a much older Irish rebellion song. My novel explores a seemingly ageless experience of racism, classism and sexism, but it is a story of perseverance, of resilience and hope, and the places that we find family. In a story of the past, I wanted to offer the chance of a different future.
I would now like to hand back to Edward Fetterman to announce the winner of the CYA category.
It is my great pleasure to announce the winner of the 2022 ARA Historical Novel Prize, Children and Young Adult category. Katrina Nannestad, author of Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief, published by HarperCollins Publishers Australia, is our winner for the second year in a row. Paul McDonald, chair of the Children and Young Adult Judging Panel, will now give his report.
The judges of this year's ARA Historical Novel Prize were again absolutely impressed by the diversity of the entries for the Children's and Young Adult Award category. Once again, the books highlighted the power of the historical novel to transport the reader to other times, particularly urging the reader to make connections between the past and the present. The person who best exercised this power, we felt, was Katrina Nannestad in her novel Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief. Nannestad is actually not a stranger to historical fiction. In fact, last year she won this category with her novel We Are Wolves. Once again, we're transported to World War II. This time the reader arrives in Russia and the Great Patriotic War, and we share the life of Sasha, a soldier at only 6 years old. The war in Russia is seen through the eyes of this young boy. So we've offered an innocent perspective, the reader sharing the journey, gradually learning about the complexities of war, both the appalling violence of war and those acts of kindness as people connect in their quest to survive. It is based on a true story of a boy soldier in the Red Army, but Nannestad goes further to create a beautiful, a poignant and a compelling narrative. The author's gift is certainly her ability to find the light in this story, to offer a tale that in the end still offers hope and love and joy. Katrina doesn't shy away from offering the tragic details of war, but she knows what to include and what to take out, what to leave out for that young reader. Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief is a memorable novel that in the end is full of heart. The writing is beautiful, the research is seamless, and the reader appeal is broad. The novel an ideal choice for readers aged 10 or 80. Congratulations to Katrina Nannestad for her novel Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief. And to mark this very special occasion, please enjoy Katrina Nannestad's illustrated reading of an excerpt from her novel.
When the soldiers return that evening, I dash around offering them sips of water from a canteen. I roll cigarettes and poke them between dry, quivering lips. I pull dusty boots off swollen feet and make the soldiers laugh when I screw up my nose at the smell of their grotty foot wraps. I fetch supper and cups of tea for the men who are too tired to walk the few steps to Cook and his cauldrons and kettles. I even spoon Kasha into the mouth of one, poking him awake between chews. I follow Natasha from one wounded comrade to the next. I pass bandages, scissors, slings, splints, needles and thread to her. I hold each soldier's hand as he is treated and tell him to be a big, brave boy and kiss him on the forehead when he's done. All except for Private Titania Petrova. I tell her to be a big, brave girl, and when her shoulder has been patched up, she kisses me on the forehead. It's even better than a salute. The soldier with the broken arm is brought back to camp on a stretcher. He now has a broken leg too. He whispers, "My 3 best friends were lost today. I'm only 6, but I know that a broken heart is much worse than a broken leg. So I sit at his side, stroke his head, and sing him a song, my favourite about the little birch tree. As I sing, some of the soldiers around me join in. I eat supper with Major Scruff, and when he walks around the camp, telling the soldiers how well they have fought today, I run around hugging them and shouting thank you for serving Mother Russia so bravely. Some laugh, some roll their eyes, but most return my hugs, and some squeeze me so hard that I lose my breath. And I think the Red Army must not give enough hugs to its soldiers."
It's my great pleasure to introduce Katrina Nannestad. Congratulations on winning the prize for the 2nd consecutive year. It's an amazing achievement.
I'm incredibly excited and honoured that my book Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief has been chosen as the winner of the ARA Historical Novel Prize for Children and Young Adults. I'd be speechless, or at least senseless, except that I've had a little bit of time to prepare this and have already cried and laughed a lot. Thanks to the ARA group who sponsor this award, and especially Edward Federman for his patronage, and to the Historical Novel Society of Australasia. Thank you to the judges for generously sharing their time, energy, talents, and passion for historical fiction. Anyone involved in writing and publishing knows that it's a team effort from the beginning of a book to the end. And I'd really like to acknowledge and thank my fabulous team. Jane Novak, my literary agent, and always a wonderful support. Tren Bing, who was firstly my editor and then my publisher at HarperCollins for 18 years. Tren was with me every step of the way in writing Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief, encouraging, mentoring, counselling, affirming. What a privilege to have created this book with her. All the amazing staff at HarperCollins, particularly Kate Burnett, my long-term editor, and always the voice in my head as I write. And last but not least, Carsten, my darling husband, who is always cheering me on. Rabbit, Soldier, Angel, Thief seems to have become sadly relevant as parts of Europe are dragged into war once more. But I hope the themes wrapped in my story will always be relevant in war or in peace, that there can be good people on both sides of a conflict, that love is powerful, and that we can all make the world a better place through simple acts of kindness. Thank you again for this amazing prize.
We now come to the Adult Prize category. The 3 members of the judging panel for the Adult category of the prize were: Panel Chair Angelo Lukakis has been a writer, teacher, scriptwriter, editor and publisher. His collection of short stories, For the Patriarch, was winner of a New South Wales Premier's Literary Award. He was the founding chair of Writing New South Wales and former executive director of the Australian Society of Authors. Identifying proudly as an East Coast saltwater First Nation person of Australia, Madison Shakespeare is a multidisciplinary lawyer, filmmaker, artist and scholar, coordinating all units of the Indigenous major at Western Sydney University. While still leading the Indigenous major, she is also engaged in decolonising cultural interface research at Flinders University. Meg Keneally is the author of The Wreck, Fled and The Last Queen. With Tom Keneally, she is co-author of the 4-book Montserrat series of historical murder mysteries. With Leah Kaminsky, she co-edited Animals Make Us Human. Due to actual or perceived conflicts of interest in relation to some authors entered into the prize, Meg Keneally recused herself from critical decision-making in determining the long list and withdrew from the judging process for the shortlist and winning book. This was in accordance with the HNSA's Conflicts of Interest policy. Chosen from the 9 long-listed books, congratulations are extended to the 3 authors shortlisted in the adult category of the prize. Horse by Geraldine Brooks, published by Hachette Australia.
Horse is a creatively conceived and skillfully written novel showing us an author passionately dedicated to telling an uncommon story. The uncovering of an abandoned painting of a champion 19th century horse entices readers into an intricately woven tale of modern detection. Founded on a real and most famous racehorse Lexington, this novel is as much about America and its history as it is about the racetrack and its community. Brooks's creative narrative retells aspects of US life in the 19th century in an original and affecting way. She alerts readers to the ruthless industry of horse breeding and training in the US during the pre-Civil War period and reveals an animal economy that relied on and profited from enslaved humans. Horse reminds that not even a civil war could eradicate the evils of racism and that a terrible legacy remains, revealing the bedrock of such a social system still evident beneath much of American life these many generations later. Brooks highlights inequities and inequities in social structure as she delivers a sobering story of old as well as modern race relations in a country still stressed by the worst of its unresolved past, while also presenting the reader with a gripping account of a truly special animal and the human beings who loved and cared for Lexington. This is a fine contribution to quality historical fiction.
I first heard the story of the great racehorse Lexington quite by chance, actually eavesdropping at another conversation at a luncheon table. And I was intrigued from the beginning about the story of this horse's racing career and what happened to the horse during the Civil War. And I knew it was the kind of story I look for in a novel. But I had no idea what a wild ride this horse was going to take me on, because it turns out that Lexington's story is not just the story of a racehorse. It is the story of race and injustice in the antebellum South and continuing into the present day. Because Lexington was trained and cared for and became successful because of the expertise and the plundered skills of enslaved black horsemen. So that's the historical spine of the novel. But there's also a contemporary thread that takes place at the Smithsonian Institution, where I went to investigate the science around the bones of Lexington and how scientists could use his skeleton to seek the secret of his great speed and endurance. There's also a missing painting of the horse that unexpectedly led me into the abstract expressionist movement in post-World War II New York. So it's a braided narrative set in 3 time periods. It's a story of art and science, love and obsession, the intense bond between people and animals, and the continuing story of race and injustice.
Corporal Hitler's Pistol by Tom Keneally, published by Penguin Random House.
Corporal Hitler's Pistol by Thomas Keneally is a richly imagined, vividly visual historical novel that skillfully moves from World War I to the Irish Civil War between rural Kempsey, Sydney and County Kerry. Seamlessly integrating historical fact and, moreover, understanding of the facts to create a novel that reads as much felt as studied into being, this novel wields Keneally's great array of narrative tools and perspectives to exercise wit, to give sway to humour, pathos, anger, forgiveness, to allow him to report as well as beguile. Keneally's ability to transport the reader to other places, to convincingly render the speech and feelings of his characters in those places is well known and may appear effortless, but in this instance personal experience helps. Tom Keneally knows his Irish history as much as he understands the Australian small towns his forebearers may have pitched up in. He knows the traumas visited on ordinary men sent to war and long-term impact on their families and whole community. Knowing this North Coast New South Wales town and surrounds, there is nothing second-hand about his rendering of its stratifications and social hierarchies or the effects of its inhabitants' values and behaviours on the lives of local people. Keneally's masterful character dialogue positions readers amidst the interaction of non-Indigenous and First Nation characters. This explicit narrative and inferred connotation provides readers with insight into the detriment of colonising lenses that perpetuate misunderstanding of traditional owners through perpetuating histories of prejudice and racism. This encourages reader rumination that may lead to a deeper understanding of the necessity of reconciliation for non-Indigenous Australians.
I've always had a yearning to tell the stories of where my Australian family comes from after their immigration. And it's an exquisite valley that belongs to the Dunghutti people and always did, though we didn't think of that at the time. And in that story come the subtext of the gay pianist who entertains the town at the movies, but who also hypnotizes chickens. We have the woman, the noble woman of the town, if you like, the bush gentry, who walks through the town and sees undeniably on the face of a half-caste kid the features of her husband. You have the overshadowing of the Macleay by war. First, World War I. For Kempsey boys had faced Hitler's battalion, Hitler's regiment, on the night of July 19th, 1916, and took many of Hitler's friends, if not Corporal Hitler himself, prisoner for a time. And last of all, the way the troubles and the brutal civil war between Free State and Republicans in 1922 and 23 cast its shadow and its axe, if you like, through the Irish halves of the Macleay Valley.
Cold Coast by Rowan Mundy, published by Ultimo Press.
Cold Coast is set in 1930s Svalbard, a northern Norwegian archipelago of islands bordering the Arctic Circle, and is based on the real-life story of Vonnie Volstad, a young widow who joins the hard-bitten and experienced Anders Saterdal to learn and live the life of the animal trapper. Author Robin Mundy clearly does not endorse the values and practices of that activity or time, but holds a mirror to the broader attitudes that supported what was once a profitable but destructive trade. This is a truly absorbing novel that succeeds on many fronts. In portraying the natural world and the species at the novel's centre, the prose is luminous. The reader is convincingly transported to an environment of ice and snow and water, of brutal landscapes where there is land at all, a place where human survival is not a given. A work of outstanding historical fiction, Cold Coast uncovers and presents the life of a woman who can best be described as proto-feminist in outlook, in her desires for a life beyond gender constraints and the sorrows of her past. On the question of how to live on an endangered planet, Mundy also reminds of where we have come from, as well as how much further we have to go.
For 20 years, I've been working in the polar regions as a ship-based tour guide. Cold Coast came from my love of the Arctic and an admiration for a remarkable woman who yearned for a wilder freedom. On my first voyage to Svalbard in the high Arctic, our ship motored into a beautiful glaciated fjord, and there at the end sat a pint-sized trapper's cabin set beneath a mountain thronging with seabirds. Inside, the cabin was barely big enough for two people to move around in, and I learned that it was used in the early 1930s by a Norwegian woman, Vonnie Volstad, a young widow who became Svalbard's first female trapper. I was enthralled. What kind of woman was she? And what did it take for Vonnie to break into the trapper's fiercely guarded male domain? What was the experience of a Svalbard winter? The threat of polar bears, crossing a glacier on foot, hiking 20 k's a day to trap Arctic fox, all in the frigid darkness of the 4-month polar night. I set about my own journey of research and discovery, which became Cold Coast.
It is my great pleasure to announce the winner of the 2022 ARA Historical Novel Prize Adult category. Tom Keneally, author of Corporal, Hitler's Pistol, published by Penguin Random House, is our winner. Angelo Loukakis, the chair of the adult judging panel, will now give his report.
This year's long and shortlisted titles in the adult category of the ARA Historical Novel Prize presented the judges with a wide range of story matter and historical contexts. Each of the novels that found a place on these lists is a unique work with much to recommend it. The group overall giving a fascinating picture of what currently engages Australian authors of historical fiction. In thematic or prismatic terms, we were challenged by explorations of racism and its effects over time, of the damage done to human lives, particularly women's lives, by last century's wars, of the experiences of an Australian immigrant community. We had multi-period novels that introduced emblems or relics from earlier times, weaving these in to show how the past may live on in more than abstract ways, indeed to deliver real and profound impacts on later generations. We also read works that movingly foregrounded individuals who might once have been passed over as lesser or minor characters, if they appeared at all. In assessing the various entries under the broad umbrella of historical fiction, the judges accepted all manner of prose styles and authorial interests as valid. But as we happily allowed each book its place under the sun, we were also, of course, obliged to measure their merits according to the competition's key criteria: excellence in writing, depth of research, and widespread reader appeal. Along with much reading, there were 88 titles entered all up. We judges held numerous meetings and engaged in occasionally animated, but overwhelmingly thoughtful and enlightening discussions to come to our final decisions. The ARA Historical Novel Prize serves to highlight the depth and quality of Australian novelists' achievements in this area. So readers have every good reason to continue to support them by buying their work and spreading the word. Finally, we warmly congratulate the authors of the 3 shortlisted titles: Geraldine Brooks, for Horse, Robin Mundy for Cold Coast, and the winner of this year's Adult Award, Tom Keneally for Corporal Hitler's Pistol. To mark this very special book, and an author who has given a great gift to Australian literary and public culture over a lifetime of writing, please now enjoy Tom's illustrated reading of an excerpt from this most outstanding novel.
People are watching a newsreel in a bush cinema, and it's of the installation of Adolf Hitler. As the man with the stupidly economic moustache stopped moving and gazed directly at the camera lens, there came from somewhere within the Victoria cinema an unearthly wail. Flo had never heard anything like this, so profound a thing, something too close to the bone compared with the easy range of emotions that the motion pictures, and above all, the newsreels, should provoke in people. The yell contained in it a sense of loss and an angry protest as well. It had not been rage particularly, it had not been even chiefly terror. It was the strangest of cries, a howl of regret perhaps, but with so many other things packed into it. On Saturday nights, the citizens of the Macleay Valley took the moving pictures with some of the same religious seriousness they applied to church the following morning. Even when they laughed, it didn't seem to go too far. The secret courting of the young in the back rows, the possible improper stringing of hands, was something the soberer members of the community chose not to think about, and it all ended, in any case, with the lights up and the changing of the reels and chickens resort to light chirping music. They left the disorderly laughter and the occasional yell or mock scream to the blackfellas at the front of the cinema and the town louts in the cheaper seats upstairs. But this cry they heard was out of order. It was an unwarranted shriek. Above all, it came from someone as affronted as Flo.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Tom Keneally. Congratulations again on your success.
Prizes are wonderful, and I'd like to thank ARA and HNSA for this wonderful prize. But it's far from a bad moment for the immensely gifted shortlist as well, because they do not come away with an empty heart. And they include my friend Geraldine Brooks, the Pulitzer Prize winner, no less, and the immensely gifted Robin Mundy. I remember reading once with an Indian Booker Prize winner named Kiran Desai, and she said at the moment the Booker Prize was announced as bearing her name, she thought, my God, I must be a writer. At least they all think so. And that's the impact that prizes can have on a novelist. They can be extraordinarily affirmative, and we need these affirmations throughout a long writing life. And I appreciate it and savor it at this stage of my life. As sweet as it is to win this prize, and as august as the judges were, and they included actually my daughter, Margaret Keneally, great novelist, who had to resign when I started to figure as a contender, and did so. But as august as that jury is, prizes are often a happy accident. And I appreciate this happy accident that has run me over. Young writers can't celebrate as obviously as me because they have to maintain their gravitas and they don't want to cheese off their mates. But I mightn't cheese off my mates this time because we have plans. May I, though, before leaving the question of gravitas, say what rises in my soul abundantly, an abundant yippee at winning this prize. But it's not yippee for the long list and the other writers on the list. And I agree with the proposition that there's a risk if you give the prize to someone as old as me, it will end up being spent on dentists for kinky geriatric dentistry, on geriatric napkin manufacturers, and on undertakers. Now, we must not let that happen. May I argue, to begin with, on our way to not letting that happen, that writing is a two-pronged matter. On the one hand, it's the creator of transcendent manifestations and tales that arise from the enormous river of narrative that flows through our species, and which we are delighted to swim in, we writers, and from which we quake treasures, or try to, that delight the readers on the shore. That's one side. The other side is that we are primary producers growing risky crops, yet nonetheless we support 20,000 people directly in the service of our industry. 20,000 Australians. I've been speaking like this since I started in the early 60s, when the novel was very much a sharp minority of Australian citizens. I'm delighted to see it has grown to prizes that can have 9 on their shortlist. I've been anxious that many ministers for the arts have just not seemed to see writing as a business that employs and that generates international standing, as our writers have in the last 50 years. And the movies made of their work have generated international standing. And that's not worthless. But they also generate foreign income revenue in small dribs and drabs. We'd quite like to generate far more. And Australian jobs. But ministers choose not to look upon it as an industry as well as a miracle. They choose to see it as a lefty hobby and an indulgence. And as a gesture against such thinking, I would like to give, and it's very appropriate for me to do so, the 6 long-listed writers a small token, a prizelet of $4,000 each. And I hope they will accept this small gesture, which is offered without rancor, and I hope it will be accepted in those terms. For writing is a matter of combining pittances into a living. I think my age and history warrant this, and I'm aware that most of us criminally failed to be born into rich families. So a combined yippee, yippee for ARA and HNSA, and yippee for my partner since the 1960s, Judy Keneally. She agreed to take that complicated Celtic name, and who is a great primary editor. But my secondary editors, the Penguin, Random House, including the esteemed professional Meredith Curnow, they I thank also. I also thank those who have taken up writing as a career. May you get away with the crime of fiction and go free and prosperous.
Thank you, Tom, for your extraordinary generosity in sharing your prize monies among the long-listed authors. I'm sure I can speak on their behalf in expressing deep gratitude for your support of fellow writers. And thank you to all for joining us in this celebration of all the talented authors and their outstanding novels in this year's 2022 ARA Historical Novel Prize. See you again next year.